China's Vice President Xi Jinping is in the United States, and he's going to be meeting with President Obama. The good news for US-China relations, facing this new Chinese leader, Xi is going to become the next Chinese president. The good news is that he knows the United States already. He's spent time here, and he sent his own daughter to an American university. The bad news is that this transition in China to a new leadership is taking place at a time when the underlying tensions in the US-China economic relationship are bubbling up again. There's always been this oscillation between engagement on the one hand and hedging on the other, and we might be at a moment when the hedging and the suspicion becomes more dominant. There are basically always two kinds of trade tension with China, or economic tension. One is specifically with trade, and there you see the tension coming up as, on the one hand, the new Obama budget proposes a trade coordination, a sort of trade implementation coordinating body within the government, which would be supposed to enforce US trade laws more aggressively, and that's done very much with China in mind. And there's already a dispute bubbling under the surface about supposed subsidies that the Chinese give to manufacturers of solar panels. And so that can easily develop into more tension on the trade side. And then on the currency side, there is this long-standing concern that China manipulates its exchange rate, giving itself an unfair advantage in exporting, and particularly at a time when global growth is so anemic in much of the world. There's resentment that the Chinese should piggyback off that external growth by having a cheap exchange rate. And really, because China is the main source of extra growth, it should be doing the opposite. It should be sort of pulling the rest of the world along by letting its exchange rate get stronger so that it would suck in more imports from the rest of the world and be a locomotive of the global economy and not just a carriage some way back in the train. So those two tensions exist, the trade and the currency side. And I think the danger is that they can be let to sort of feed on themselves with suspicion and counter-suspicion. And we need to break that cycle. And I've got two suggestions. One is borrowed from my colleagues at the Council's Renewing America program. And they propose that to offset the trade disputes, some of which you're going to have, and it's inevitable, but to offset them, you should have a positive initiative on the investment side, trying to attract Chinese companies to invest in this country, create jobs in this country. That's something the Chinese say they'd like to do. So why not embrace that and say, yes, you would be welcome to come and put your money here in a long-term way and help our economy. On the currency side, I want to invoke a very good working paper we published earlier this year at the Council by Alan Taylor of the University of Virginia. And he argues that we should embrace the Chinese government's rhetoric about making the renminbi an international currency. It sounds like a threat to the preeminence of the US dollar and therefore a bad thing, a challenge to our reserve currency status. But in fact, if we embrace China's ambitions on this front, it will lead China to carry out reforms, if they want to internationalize their currency, which include things like lifting capital controls, changing the way that domestic finance is regulated, therefore probably pushing down the Chinese savings rate, which would then in turn cause the currency to adjust and cause China to have less of a current account surplus. So these are two concrete ideas that I think we should embrace. They would work with the grain, not against the grain, with respect to China, and they'd be a way of making some common ground to offset the inevitable tensions in the economic part of our relationship with China.